Today on Technado, we'll be talking with pen tester Barry Morgan. We're also going to take a look at Google's new supercomputer and test a theory about why hackers seem to misspell their phishing emails. That's all coming up on Technado, starting right now. Hello and welcome to Technado. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, joined, as always, by Justin Dennison and Don Pizzette. How you gentlemen doing?
Hello.
Como está usted?
I shouldn't have said how you gentlemen doing, because then you would just both answer at the exact same time.
Like exactly how it went.
But for those listening, they both, it was an affirmative, doing well.
Yeah, we're doing well, because I'm pretty sure that came across your car radio or your earbuds very well, where Don's speaking in Spanish, and I was just like, yep.
Yeah. It's a really special show this week.
Is it?
It's something that I
more
always
special than regular?
typically say.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk to Barry Morgan in a little bit. He is the co-founder of Absolute Cyber Defense. They do a lot of pen testing, and we're going to find out about their approach. We've talked to a lot of companies, I feel like, that do pen testing, but a lot of them have been, kind of aimed at like Fortune 500 kind of companies, and I kind of like hearing Barry's stories because we're going to talk a little bit more about small businesses and some of the things they come across there. So that'll be coming up in a bit. We're also playing Buzzword Bingo today. If you head over to go.itpro.tv/buzzword-bingo, you can download the card there and play along online as you enjoy the podcast today. And I don't think I've said anything yet, but do have my free square mark. So,
But not while you're driving. Don't play while you're driving.
Yeah.
If you're in traffic, don't
drive.
Yeah.
Remember all the words.
Yep.
And try to write them down.
Or because it's a podcast, you can just listen again.
You could.
Yep.
I assume most people listen to this 3 or 4 times
Yeah.
to get all the little Easter eggs and things that.
Yeah. I probably agree.
Yeah.
At minimum 3 times.
Cool. All right. Let's get to our first article. It's over on CNN.com in the business section. Google claims its quantum computer can do the impossible in 200 seconds. And from what I understand, they're saying that they can do something that, it actually says it here in the first line, something that takes the world's fastest supercomputer 10,000 years to figure out, they can do in 200 seconds. So, first of all, how? And second of all, is this theoretical now and not something they've actually built?
So, other way around, it's been theoretical. They've been building computers, and Google has invested a ton of money in quantum computing. There have been debates over what they've built, whether it counts as a quantum computer or if it doesn't. And, basically they've come out now with an official claim saying, look, this isn't theory anymore. We've done this. This has already happened. We were able to perform X amount of processes that performed at a rate orders of magnitude higher than what any computer is capable of today. And the reason this is meaningful, like the fact that Google has a fast computer isn't necessarily significant in and of itself, but the bigger ramification is that a lot of the encryption algorithms that we rely on today, they really aren't truly secure. It's just, it would take a computer a long, long time to break it. And so if I know that I'm using encryption that would take 1,000 years to break, then I'm okay with that because my data is not going to be relevant 1,000 years from now. But with this leap to quantum computing, now we've got a bigger challenge. Now that encryption that took 1,000 years to break, they can break in, 1,000 seconds or 20 seconds, right?
Yeah.
1,000 years, they could do it in 20 seconds. So all of a sudden, the encryption that I'm relying on might be completely useless.
I'm wondering in what fraction of a second they could get my password then.
Considering you type it on your FOSS-cam, I already got it.
Yeah. Shoot.
They are Google. They'll just search for it.
Yeah, they're like, we got that indexed. Yeah, we found that. So when I read the blog article, I had a hard time trying to figure out what the experiment was. Like, was it meaningful? Because if you read this article, it's a little hand-wavy to me. It seems like, we did something in 200 seconds that should take 10,000 years. Okay, but what did they do? Now, I read the blog article, and it looks like they just did some random stuff. Is that what you took away, Don?
Yeah, and that's basically it. This is a claim, right? They're not saying here's the proof. And I remember when Google first started talking about collisions in MD5, right? And how they were saying, look, we can actually create 2 different sets of data that have the same hash, so you shouldn't be using MD5 anymore. And it was just kind of a concept, an idea. Most of us thought, hey, they could change like one bit in the file and achieve it. But then one day they released that PDF where one version of the PDF is red and the other one is green, and the text is slightly different inside of them, and they both have the same MD5 hash. So when Google comes out with a claim like this, they usually back it up. And so what I expect is over the next couple of months, we'll see where they come out with some kind of realistic application for this. And if the application is security focused, then it's a big deal. Then it's a big problem, right? Imagine if they've already solved that, if they've already figured out how to use this to decode AES 256 traffic, right? Well, now in theory, Google could intercept and monitor any encrypted data sent via TLS, right? So that would be a big problem. They would want to do that because it helps their search algorithms. But for the rest of us, it would be a huge violation of privacy and rights.
I mean, this technology has the potential of going in 24 hours, like a huge swath of technology or technological spaces has been upended. I went digging a little bit deeper because I was trying to understand like why this problem would matter. But again, I think you hit it on the head. It's like a proof of concept. IBM released a statement in opposition that says they've overestimated the amount of time that the classical simulation would take, and that it would actually only take a couple of days.
But still, 200 seconds to 2.5 days is better.
Yeah,
but it's not 10,000 years.
No.
And sometimes you get better performance in one scenario versus another. Like when you're measuring the gas mileage of a car, you could show like, well, when I'm going downhill, it's all amazing. But then when you're going uphill, it isn't. So we don't know enough about Google's example to be able to determine, maybe they were going downhill during this, and so it's not a fair representation. But a lot of people are responding. Cisco has actually been ahead of this for a while, where they said, look, quantum computing is coming. And so they started publishing a list of all the encryption algorithms used on their devices, and they would identify them as being QCR, or quantum computing resistant. And it was basically a big message to everybody, all the customers out there, saying, look, if you're using encryption that's good enough but not QCR, you need to be moving over to QCR. And there's a buzzword attached to this, although I don't think it's on our buzzword bingo, which is next generation encryption, or NGE. And so, well, maybe encryption is, but
we do have that. Yes, I've checked it off already.
On my car, I don't get any of this stuff. But basically, they're just saying, look, quantum computing, it's not a if anymore. It's not a theoretical. It's going to happen. It might not meet the mainstream for another 2 decades, right? But you need to be getting ready for it today.
What I think is cool too, if they've got the photo on there of this thing that looks like, it looks like a rocket. Yeah, I don't know what this is, but it's cool to think though. Back to those old photos of them loading
like EUNIAC and
4 megabytes of storage onto an airplane because it was so huge, and what it is now. So just kind of cool to think, in 30 years and 50 years, they're going to look back at this photo and say, oh man, that's crazy. My watch, is
quantum
10 times faster than this.
For those of you driving, screaming at your stereo, going, "What is he talking about?" It kind of looks like a missile silo with a bunch of random components in it.
I mean, it's taller than him.
Yep. And if you go and you read a little bit about quantum computing, it usually involves like ridiculous temperatures.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we're talking, we need to cool it down to where heat energy doesn't cause vibrations that interfere with calculations at the quantum level.
And you can't see it in the picture, but it's basically designed to be operated inside of a giant metal tube so that they can completely cycle the air through it, and they run it at sub-zero temperatures.
It's
well below zero.
I want to say it's getting close to absolute zero. It's like right at 30 Kelvin or something like that.
Like
I could be wrong about
theater, that. Basically.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, no sounds here.
All right. Our next article, not as cool. Yeah, this one's over on AndroidPolice.com. Samsung's Linux on DeX project shuts down after just 11 months. It wasn't even a year old. That's sad. I don't know about the Linux on DeX. Am I saying that right? DeX?
So you are,
okay.
And you should be aware because we reported on it, but we reported on it 11 months ago when they announced it. So I don't blame you for forgetting. It's a neat idea. Android phones are very, very powerful, right? Oh, I mean, iPhones are too, right? But Android phones, the processor that's in them, the memory is better than most desktops and laptops that have been made in the last 10 years. So they're powerful devices. And so Samsung was floating this idea last year of saying, look, you don't just have to run Android. We could actually run a full-blown Linux distro in a container on top of Android, sharing the kernel like Docker does, and basically fire that up and have a Linux desktop on your phone. Now, the problem is you don't want to use a computer on your phone. It's too small. So they started selling these DeX docking stations. And, had I thought about it, I've got one in the cabinet over there, but where you could drop your phone into it and hook it up to a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse, and you'd pop up your Linux
this
desktop.
Is like, your fantasy.
No, it's a little different because I would have to go somewhere that had a monitor, a keyboard, a desktop waiting for me and plug in. And, you can't carry that around with you. It's not like a laptop where you drop your phone into it.
I see. Okay.
Although, I mean, in theory, it could get
it's
there.
the same technology.
So, I bought it. I tried it out. It was neat. I signed up for the beta, and kind of went through that. But it just didn't get general acceptance. But then Android 10 changed some security features that broke DeX. And Samsung said, well, we're not going to fix it. And so that's the end of it. So that dream of being able to run a full Linux distro on top of your Android phone is now gone.
They say when your dreams get tough and you hit a roadblock, you should give up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a song about that, right?
Yeah, and then the song ends right there because it was hard to write another verse.
Yeah, it's writing.
Yep, writing's dumb.
Well, I'm sorry.
It was like Billy Ocean, wasn't it?
Billie Eilish.
Okay.
Oh. Can you actually hear her in any of her songs?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. All those songs sound the same to me.
as Peter's pulling out his rocking chair and straw hat.
And she's like,
get off my lawn.
It's my ball. I'm keeping it now. All right. We're going to go over now to cbronline.com, which is Computer Business Review. VMware updates come with a unique OS swap. Can they do that? They can just swap the OS?
Do anything.
Is that as part of like a
So this headline got me because VMware vSphere 7 is coming out eventually, right? So it's been internally announced at VMware. They've started kind of laying the foundation for it. So most people know it's coming. We just don't know when. So either quarter 1, quarter 2 of 2020, we're going to see VMware vSphere 7. Now, the kind of building block of vSphere is ESX. That's their virtualization server that you run on bare metal to then run all your virtual machines. And ESX runs a version of Linux, right? A custom-built version. And so I thought they were saying that they were changing the OS of ESX, which would be a pretty significant deal and impact businesses a lot. Turns out they're not quite doing that yet, but they are getting closer to doing it. They're talking about an update that's coming to their vRealize login site. So that's their logging system, which is actually a really slick system that collects all your virtualization logs, puts them in one place, and lets you keep tabs on what's going on inside your vSphere environment. Well, up until now, that has run as a virtual appliance built on top of SUSE Linux. And they are switching out to run on top of Photon Linux. Now, if you've never heard of Photon Linux, I don't blame you, but it is a open public thing. Actually, here, hang on. I've got the Photon webpage pulled up. You can go to vmware.github.io/Photon to learn about it. But it's a version of Linux that is entirely curated by the VMware team. And they built it to be a lightweight version of Linux specifically designed to run containers. And this is similar to like Clear Linux that is from Intel. Each of these vendors are starting to kind of create their own. So Photon is VMware's. And they're starting to move their applications over to running on top of Photon instead of running on SUSE or other things. So I think eventually we will see ESX get moved over to running on top of Photon as well. The neat part here is when I heard about changing the underlying OS, I thought about it was going to be an upgrade nightmare. But apparently their engineering team has fully automated the process so that when you upgrade from the older version, which oddly enough, the older version is version 4.8. So when you upgrade to 8.0, I'm not entirely sure why they jumped
4.8.
They went from 4.8 all the way to 8.0. But when you do that, it's just like a regular update and it changes the OS just seamlessly in the background. And that's that. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know you could do that. It's like Windows 9. Like where is it?
So I heard I got interested.
See if you got the same story as me.
Yeah, we'll see. I heard they skipped it because during search for like search indexes, people would look up Windows 98, Windows 95, Windows 9 would clash with those indexes, and it would be hard to like navigate documentation. That's what I heard.
That makes sense.
So the story I heard was very similar. It was from the developer community that a lot of applications, when they would launch, they would use a regex to test what operating system you're running on. And it used to be you had either Windows NT or Windows 9X, 95, 98, and so on. And so that kind of broke it. So they said, screw it, we'll just go to Windows 10.
Yeah, I think there was I think essentially that ended up being the same thing. I think they were both driven by developers. Like, how do you navigate this? I test for this.
Yeah, we basically made a new Y2K.
Effectively, yeah.
I saw a lot of great memes around the Area 51. We're going to raid Area 51 thing of people escaping with Windows 9 copies of Windows 9. That's where they keep it.
Yeah, I would like to see them.
It exists.
Yeah.
It's there.
Nope.
All right, this next article I know will make Don happy. This is on the Yubico blog. Yubico login for Windows application is now generally available, and it shows someone with their YubiKey plugged into their Surface laptop there, and they're logging in that way. So, I always liked where you could draw your little face on the Windows, and it would.
That's
log
gone
in
now,
that
right?
way,
You
but
can't do
I
that
don't think
anymore?
so. Yeah, I've honestly I've been on a Mac for a while now that I haven't used. What's it, Windows Hello now?
Or a touchscreen.
Yeah, I don't. I swipe every time when I log in, but it doesn't do
Your
anything.
screen is disgusting.
So how is this different than what you could do with your YubiKey before?
All right, so I've had a YubiKey for years. I love it. I use it in a number of different places. So like whenever I log into my Google account, I have to plug in my YubiKey and tap the little button to activate it, and that unlocks my account, lets me log in. So it's my second factor. I don't get paid by YubiKey, but I certainly recommend the product.
You say it's your what now?
Did I trigger? Oh,
well, you kind of did, but you like,
come on.
It's multi-factor. It counts.
Yeah, I was going to count it anyway. If I'm being honest.
Yeah,
it's your second of authentication factor.
The thing is, it worked inside of your web browser, and it even worked inside of certain applications, but it did not work for the Windows login screen. And unlike Linux, where you've got the whole PAM system where you can write plugins and you can use your YubiKey to actually log in, you couldn't do it with Windows. It wouldn't count for the login screen as a second factor. So you were still typing in a password or doing Windows Hello, where it would use your face or fingerprint or whatever. So with the Yubico login for Windows, when you install that service on Windows, you can now use your YubiKey at the Windows login screen. Now, I'm kind of in a mixed spot on this. So I actually am running Windows on my laptop right now, and I'm not using the Yubico login for Windows. And my reasoning is twofold. One, right now I am using Windows Hello. And so when I turn on the computer, it's got the facial recognition and it logs me in. I don't have to plug in anything.
But that's just considered single factor. I mean, that right? Is that considered multi-factor?
So biometric like things are really hard to fake if it's good.
Right. And the TPM in the laptop counts as the second factor. So those two combined, so like if you took my hard drive out and put it in a different computer, it lost the TPM. That factor is now gone.
I see.
Right. And then my face is the second factor when I log in. So that's pretty convenient. I've got a fingerprint reader where I can just set my finger on there, and that's a factor. Or I can type in a PIN number, right? So
but if they've stolen your body, they've already got.
That's true. I'm probably not worried about it at that point.
At that point, I don't think the YubiKey makes a difference, right? It's
true.
like, we also got his YubiKey, guys, and his finger and his eyeballs.
Your body was wearing pants.
Yeah.
Had the keys in the pocket.
Now, if I didn't have a Windows Hello capable camera, I'd probably be a lot more excited about this. But the other thing is, I've seen attempts like this before where they've tried to make it work with the login screen, and then an update will come out to Windows and it breaks it, right? Or it works in Windows 10, but then Windows 11 comes out and it's not supported anymore. So it ends up not being a long-term solution. So I'm going to wait on this one a little bit and just see. Like if it can survive 6 months, at that point, I might switch over to it and go. But I am excited to see it. I think it's great. I love the fact that they're getting it where the YubiKey is more integrated into all these different spots.
So since Linux on DeX, you have trust issues now?
Well, no. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of tech products that have died on the vines.
If you had given that 6 months, you'd still be in the same boat.
Well, that's true, yeah, because it took 11 months for them to kill it.
I would give it 11 and a half months before you.
However, the argument could be made that YubiKey's been around for longer than 6 months. So the Linux on DeX thing was like running on top of Android. But I mean, it would suffer from the same thing, right?
Yeah, just
Android
one
11.
update.
I don't know. It is a toss up.
Is this functionality available on a Mac or on Linux? Obviously, that's not what the announcement's about. But can you do that with YubiKey?
It is on Linux. Okay. I do not believe it is on Mac yet, and we'll have to see what happens there. Apple's a little bit more controlling of the login.
No, Apple.
But Apple's security track record is so mediocre right now that you'd think they would embrace something like this.
Yeah. I have a fingerprint scanner as well.
Do you?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, that's right, because you have Touch ID thanks to your touch bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have mine.
That's the one thing I use on the touch bar. Oh, and the volume button, because that's the only spot where it is.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Is the fingerprint reader also right next to the Siri key?
Yeah.
You know it is.
Oh, bro. If Siri comes on one more time while I'm typing something,
Instead of saying, how can I help you, it should just say,
did you mean to do
yeah,
this?
was it a fingerprint thing or? Okay,
Or
just checking.
you were hitting backspace? No? Okay.
Nice. I don't think I have ever used anything to the left of the volume buttons on there.
The escape key, which I wish was physical.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's hiding over there. But none of the like the specific things to whichever application you're currently using.
Was that your fault, though? I mean, like, if you learned what buttons were there, would you...
I guess. I mean, if I had started using a computer for the first time when this existed, I maybe would have been more prone to.
I'm going to go ahead and pull out my rocket chair and my straw hat and say absolutely not. I hate this thing. Get off my computer,
Get
touch
your touch bar off my lawn. All right, fantastic. Let's head over to our next article now over at thenextweb.com. Microsoft's open source election software now has a bug bounty program, as it definitely should. So this is something that is not in practice yet, right? Or actual municipalities.
Technically it could be. They announced this, I think, last year, a while ago. It's called Election Guard, and it's software designed to be run on voting machines to help protect the
data,
votes, the ballots, and all that stuff. Those are obviously being attacked, and at every Black Hat and DEF CON, they're always breaking open the voting machines.
It's like, hey, look, a 6-year-old broke into the voting machine again.
Yeah, so we know the systems aren't perfect. But basically, they've now gone generally available with this, so you can get it. It's got a GitHub repository. Anybody can download it, and they want eyes on it so that people can help to identify flaws in it. Well, it's been open source, so people have been able to look at it, but the bug bounty program helps to incentivize that. Now, if you find a flaw in our voting software, then we'll pay you X amount of dollars, so you get compensation. So that's all going on. I don't know. I have a hard time with this. Like, the electronic voting has a lot of problems because people they're really half-assing the development of the software. But at the same time, physical voting has tons of flaws as well because ballot stuffing and all that has been going on for over 100 years. So it's kind of a lose-lose proposition. I guess this is the best we're going to get.
I mean, you say it like other software is not half-assed, but I'm pretty sure that's just true of developers in general.
But I think this software is more. There's more reason to go after.
I totally get that, and I can say where I'm from, like electronic voting, they're like, no, computer's bad, but I would argue it would be great if we could take any human element out of that because of, ballot stuffing or, oops, the computer came unplugged and we lost all our results. It'll be fine, though, or whatever it may be, or the 6-year-old hacked inside.
Yeah.
I looked around in this bug bounty a little bit, and it's kind of hard to navigate. I'm not gonna.
Well, but if you're a talented hacker, you'll be able to navigate that no problem.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it is. I'm a pretty smart guy.
So here's my question. Let's say, I figure something out, and it's this is a big problem that I've discovered. I can get a reward of up to $15,000. Now I'm a good person, but I gotta feel like Russia's paying a little bit more for that to exploit than $15,000. I might go to the highest bidder at that point.
Got to figure out your loyalties. You know, I think if we made it a federal law that every U.S. citizen had to watch Rocky IV, then I think people would participate in the bug bounty.
Sure. No, that's true.
And actually, the payments are depending on what you can get the software to do. Privilege escalation, complete, everything's soup to nuts, $15K. If you get a baseline, it's $3,000. Information disclosure, complete, $15K. Baseline, $3,000. Security design flaw. Just showing a security design flaw gives you $1,000 to $8,000.
Not bad.
Like, this is wrong. I might try that. Denial of service is $3,000. Spoofing and tampering is $3,000. Wouldn't you think spoofing and tampering would be more than $3,000?
Seems like tampering would be the biggest problem, right? That's
is it? Actually, doesn't privilege escalation fall into that? Because if I can escalate my privileges, I mean, I can do whatever I want to. Be like, Mr. Potato Head got 7 million votes.
Maybe like
Well, that could be legit where you're from.
Yeah, true. Idaho.
maybe just tampering alone could be detected, but if you had elevated privileges, you could hide the tampering.
Yeah.
So maybe
like
maybe it's all
modify
based on
logs
that.
and stuff.
All right, get your. Oh, go ahead. You got more.
I will say, right above this pay range, bounty awards range from $500 to $15,000. Higher awards are possible at Microsoft's discretion.
Ooh,
Impress us.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's exciting. Get on
so-
it.
So
Why did
I wonder
Justin
if
quit? Oh, he's working on.
yeah,
on
he
his
was
bug bounty.
learning Russian or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's-
By the way, I did say Russia. Nobody checked it, but keep your pens out. Okay, I'm gonna.
I don't
go
have
ahead
Rush on my card.
check that off, even
Maybe.
though you said Russian. Because
Yeah,
letters were
I'll
on there.
allow it.
Because we were both going to take multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, we were.
So,
Man, you were asking if we allowed to. I was already marking it off.
so keep your pens out, though. Our next article on zdnet.com. Avast says hackers breached internal network through compromised VPN profile. Czech antivirus maker discloses second attack aimed at compromising CCleaner releases. So, first of all, how are you compromising a VPN profile? All
right, so what's going on here is let's start with CCleaner, right? So CCleaner is a debatable software package that's designed to help look at Windows machines and clean them up, right? Remove malware and browser hijacks
and only
things.
put its malware on, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's how most of those.
There's a lot of people out there that will tell you that CCleaner is worthless. There's other people that'll say CCleaner makes their machine run better than it's ever run before. So, there's different stories out there. But at the end of the day, they got acquired by Avast last year, 2 years ago. And right before the acquisition, CCleaner had to disclose that there was a breach, right? So that some attackers had gotten in, and they actually managed to put malware into the CCleaner updates. So the malware was being rolled out to people who were running it. The software that's supposed to clean your machine was, in fact, infecting your machine. It's a pretty big black eye, for a security organization. Well, Avast is now in charge, and they said, look, we acquired the company. They already had this, and now we're going to get them up to snuff. Unfortunately, they have had a breach, and as a result of the breach, attackers were able to get into their network, and they were targeting CCleaner again. Now, this time it's through a compromised VPN profile. And remember, we say VPN profile, that really just means the settings for a VPN. So they managed to get a user's credentials and the various settings required to connect via VPN. Once they connected, they were on the Avast network, and able to access their internal documents. Now, Avast detected this, and they actually, from the moment of detection, apparently it had been going on a while, but the user's credentials they were using was just a regular user, not like a power user. And it wasn't until they gained elevated privileges through another exploit that they were able to actually get in. And that's what set off the Avast security alarms or whatever. If you read about it, it's actually kind of interesting because they use Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics, and the Microsoft ATA was detecting this stuff going on, and they thought they were false positives. And so they kind of ignored it for a while until they actually saw something that they knew beyond a doubt was not a false positive. And then they allowed the attackers to rattle around in the network for like another 2 weeks while they watched what they were doing just to see what were the systems the attackers were accessing. So they figured all that out. They updated all their passwords and so on. And then now they're telling us about it today.
Their former password was Ye-Mateys.
Yeah, password 123.
Username Avast.
So anyhow, there's a few takes on this. So on one hand, they're being pretty open about what happened, and they're telling people, here's how they got in, here's what they did while they were in the system. At the same time, it did take them a while to disclose, right? So it says the intrusion was actually detected on September 23rd. And so here we are on October 24th. That means they waited a full month for disclosure, which is a violation of GDPR.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is it?
3 days.
Oh, 3 days. Okay, so now if I like the idea of when you recognize the breach that you don't close it off right away and see what they're going after, but is there a way to disclose privately?
So that's probably my biggest issue. Like if I found out someone broke in my house, I wouldn't be like, I'm going to see what they'd get into. see what happens.
Yeah,
right?
like can you just report to the governing body of GDPR and basically say, "Hey, I got this person in. I don't want to make this public yet because I want to see what's going on."
Yeah, well, that's where you don't technically have to report to the EU, right? You do have to report to the customers who were affected. And then later on, if the EU does an investigation, they might say, like, did you contact the customers in this time? And if you can't prove that, if you can't show that you sent registered letters or emails or something like that that went to the people notifying them, then that's when you're in violation. So in this case, they're being pretty open about the fact that, well, I mean, maybe they're not saying that here. Like, we contacted any customers that were affected. Or maybe they feel that no customer was affected, that the attackers got in, but they weren't able to do anything that truly affected the customer. No customer data was accessed.
No PII.
You could make that argument. And there are some clauses in GDPR that dictate where that line is drawn, but it's fairly vague. So I doubt we'll ever see anything on that. But it is important to note that the breach was detected on September 23rd, but the attackers were absolutely in there beforehand, right? Because they mentioned the false positive things that were happening, and that it could have been going on for weeks before it was finally detected. So this is an example of where a security company, a company that is focused on this stuff, that was already running a security monitoring system, a system that did detect the attack, still made the mistake of thinking it was a false positive. So it is a really, really tough job to secure a network today.
Yeah, complacency. Oh, that's your own enemy. You're like, it is false positives. It does say in the article maybe as far back as May. So that was a long time to be. But I guess the average discovery time is, 6 months? Around about? Yeah. So that puts them right at the 6-month mark. Oops.
That's where these numbers come from, I guess.
Yep.
All right. Our next article is at arstechnica.com. Hackers steal secret crypto keys for NordVPN. Here's what we know so far. Breach happened 19 months ago. Popular VPN service is only disclosing it now. Is this the same article where we're talking about VPN and we're talking about taking too long to disclose, and it seems a lot of similarities here.
So both of these hit this week, and normally I would have just picked one of them to report on, and I think the Avast one is a little more important because of the lesson there of a security company getting hacked. But this one's important for a slightly different reason. NordVPN is probably one of the leading personal VPN services that are out there. They cost, I forget how much, something like $70 a year. And you can VPN in and get Netflix even if you're not in the United States. So that's how most people use services like this. Or if you're at a hotel and you don't trust the hotel network, you can use NordVPN to, in theory, access a network you trust, but in reality, you're just going out to the internet, so you still don't trust it. So either way, that's kind of the purpose of the platform. NordVPN promises that they do not record logs of anything that users do, so if somebody were to subpoena them, they wouldn't be able to provide logging information. Well, attackers managed to get into one of their nodes. Now, they have a ton of nodes spread all across the planet, and so this is just one of them that was compromised. So that means this is actually a pretty small breach in the general scheme of things. And since they don't maintain logs, all the attackers were really able to do was mess with people's tunnels and potentially log while they were in the system on that one particular node. So pretty minor. But the thing that I thought was interesting, the one I wanted to mention here on the show, is how this hack occurred. This hack occurred, and it's actually, in my opinion, not NordVPN's fault. They have these nodes all over the place in co-location facilities. And the cloud services provider, or the co-host provider that they were using, had a out-of-band management system. So they had a way where they could access the console of any machine in that data center. And this was not disclosed to the customers. So like NordVPN didn't even know the system existed. You had to be an employee of the data center and work in like the network operations center of that data center. Well, the attackers got access to that out-of-band management. So it wasn't as out of band as it should have been, right, if they were able to get access to it. And once they had that, they had console access to the NordVPN node, and they were able to exploit that to then break into the system and gain access. That's pretty significant, right? If you've got stuff thrown in AWS, if you've got stuff thrown in Microsoft Azure or in a co-location facility somewhere, you're trusting those facilities, and they absolutely have management interfaces to be able to do console access, and you have little to no control over that. And in this scenario, that's how the break-in occurred. So it's an extra attack surface people don't think about.
And if you look, this article actually points you to like a hist file log of the commands that were used in the attack to gain the TLS key. Is that what it said? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they had root because they were just like cat, ls. They were just moving around at will. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I was at like AWS, Azure, and they have one of these systems, that's part of their the shared responsibility. That's their responsibility. And if something happens to mine, like how does that work regulatory wise?
Oh, sure. So, for them, it's a problem, right? But there's no real liability here because all they have to do is say that it's a shared responsibility. So if an attacker managed to get to your console, they shouldn't have been able to log in, right? You should have required two-factor authentication. You should have had strong passwords. You should have had a patch system where there were no exploits from the login screen, right? And so then the attacker having access to the console doesn't do anything. That would be the argument that they would use to get out of any liability there. Now, they have a bigger problem. If the attackers were able to access this out-of-band management, that means they were able to access the consoles probably of other customers, not just NordVPN, but other services, and we haven't heard about that. So there's likely more breaches along these lines that we're not hearing about.
So here's the question I have. It says the breach happened 19 months ago, and they're just now disclosing it. Is that because they just now became aware of it?
No. In this case, they're saying that they didn't want to disclose until they had a good handle on what customers were affected, what data was accessed, and how far the breach spread. So apparently, it took them 19 months to reach that conclusion, and they're just now releasing it, which is actually the reason why GDPR has that clause for 3-day responsible disclosure. So because companies could wait as long as they wanted, right? Yahoo did that, where they waited, what was it, like 9 years before disclosing?
If your breach happened before GDPR took effect and you haven't disclosed it yet.
That would be a good argument.
Now, but your breach is ongoing.
You're off the hook.
Are you? Or 3 days after GDPR went into effect, were tons of people going, by the way, we've been breached.
But I think you do. Wouldn't you get grandfathered in for the 3-day, like telling
disclosure?
People, right? 3-day disclosure. Because if you knew and it was 6 months, then it went into effect. Do you have 3 days from that time?
Yeah.
I think it's from data detection. So like if you detect it and then you just didn't do anything to protect it, like that's I think that's okay under GDPR.
So if GDPR comes after you and you go, oh no, this is old. We've had this problem for
Bill's
years.
known about this for years. Yeah. Wow, that's I don't use Nord. Do you use Nord? Yeah.
No, they charge a lot. Those services are flimsy at best, right? You're better off just using OpenVPN to a system at your own home. And now you've got the same level of support you get from them. I could see paying $5 or $10. I do use AirVPN. I'm not endorsing a product necessarily, but because I really like their IPleak.net website. And so I use that in demonstrations on the show and things. But like when I travel, I just VPN into my home. And that's the same level of security you're going to get from any VPN provider.
I too love AirVPN. And all the great service, their customer service, just second to none.
And Pepsi Cola.
And Frito-Lays.
Wild packs of dogs.
Running wild in the streets.
All right. Our next article is actually more of a video over on bbc.com, but we're not going to show you that video. We're going to describe it.
I'm concerned this guy looks. For our listeners, I mean, this guy is obviously upset and distressed.
Very upset. Yes, he should be. Because the headline is, I lost 4,000 pounds. This is not a weight loss thing. This is we're referring to a monetary figure in a call center scam. And I know that because they spelled center wrong with the R before the E. So I lost 4,000 pounds in a call center scam. I'm almost curious why this is big news, because these things happen all the time, don't they?
Yeah, so what's going on here is that some of the phone scams are getting more and more sophisticated, and obviously they prey on the elderly, they prey on people who are not technically savvy.
Well, we even talked about the bank one last week. That
very
sophisticated, and not someone that you would put in that vulnerable group, someone that should be aware of these things, and luckily was. But
so this one started out a little different, right? It was a cold call the guy received. And it was a company selling security software. And they said, look, we have security software. It does antivirus and exploit protection. We protect you from ransomware. And it is £557 for 12-year subscription, 12 years of service. And so the guy said, that's a pretty decent price. That's cheaper than some of the other software out there. And so he paid it. I think it was 557 pounds, somewhere right around there, for 12 years of service. So he bought the software from them, and they installed the software. Now, it turns out that the software really wasn't regular security. It was just a remote administration toolkit or a RAT. And so they were, from that point on, able to completely control his computer. And so then what they did is they called him on the phone one day and said, we've got a big issue, a big problem. Go to your computer. And so he went to his computer, and they then started popping up pictures showing what they said was a Russian man who was buying firearms and doing illegal transactions. And they said, he's using your money. He's doing this stuff under your identity. We've got to stop this. And they, through a very convincing conversation, convinced the guy to log into his bank. And they did this together with him, to log into the bank and to transfer 4,000 pounds over to pay some kind of protection racket or whatever to get the Russians to stop using his identity. But it was all fake. It was all being perpetrated by this, what it turned out to be an Indian call center. So in India, they did a number of raids to shut these call centers down. But it shows how, these guys are doing all sorts of crazy stuff to prey on unsuspecting victims.
You know what I think the real, what would really make me angry about that? I mean, don't get me wrong, the whole thing would make me angry, but I paid for my own malware. Effectively. Yeah. You're like, pay us 557 pounds and we're going to take over your computer. That's a deal. I can't pass that up.
For 12 years I'll have this malware. That's...
Yeah. Does this go from computer to computer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old scam, the old roofing scam, where the crew would come by and they'd knock on your door and they'd say, look, we're doing another roof here in the neighborhood, and as a result, if we do other roofs, it brings the price down since we've already got the crew out and stuff. So for $4,000, we can redo your roof. Now, getting your roof redone, that's $10,000-$15,000 for a normal sized house. And so if somebody offers you $4,000, you cut them a check and they'll do it, and then they would take the check and you'd never see them again. And so that scam has been around for 50 years. So this is like the new modern version of it.
It's taken over.
I pay on completion. And then you go, are you licensed and bonded? You're not. Cool. I'm not paying for this.
Well, and that's the trick here, is that they actually installed some software. Like, the guy felt like he was buying a product, but in the end, you really don't know what the software does. When you go to Symantec and you buy their antivirus, do you really know what it does?
Costs me money.
It says antivirus.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, there's a little shield in the system tray.
It's
but
right there.
Could be a total scam. Who knows?
What? You heard it here first.
Breaking news.
Oh, no. Scam. That's how rumors get started. I feel a cease and desist letter coming in.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Norton is also a scam. They're all scams.
This episode brought to you by Symantec.
No, it's brought to you by that Air VPN, whatever that I plugged earlier.
Have you checked your backups today?
Yeah.
All right. This next article makes me very happy because it was actually sent to us by a listener who heard what we were talking about last week or the week before about these email scams and these phishing attempts, how poorly they're written. And
that's right, because we were going to create our own editorial service.
We're going to have a service that you can pay us if you're, if in your Indian call center or your Nigerian bank that will proofread for you and help you with your scamming for a small percentage. But this article over from Joseph Steinberg on josephsteinberg.com makes an interesting case of why scammers make spelling and grammar mistakes. And it basically breaks it down into, I think it's 4 points here. The first one, it says, the goal of the scammer is to make money, not to have many people respond to his or her email. As such, scammers only want people who will ultimately fall prey to the scam to respond. So I guess the thinking there is that the kind of person that weeds it out because of the bad spelling would have weeded themselves out later anyway, potentially. So let's get these people out from day one.
Is this like a sales funnel?
It seems like, in sales, you want to get someone to say yes or no because you don't want to waste your time with the person that's going to say no later. You want to get them out so you're not wasting your time.
So this is where you don't want a marketing qualified lead. You want a sales qualified lead.
Yeah, that's an SQL.
Yeah.
So another reason scammers introduced spelling mistakes. Scammers who misspelled some relevant words had a greater chance of having their scam emails penetrate through spam filters than did scammers who spelled everything correctly. So
that doesn't make any sense to me.
It's like Viagra with a 1 instead of an I.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound
but I think these spam filters
how are these spam filters working? Like, it's misspelled. It's got to be legit.
Well, it's not the word that they had on their filter.
Yeah, the simple regex again.
Carry on. What are the
Okay,
other
makes
two
sense.
issues?
Makes sense. And I think this is a theory here.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
think this
yeah,
guy
there's
is
no
not-
evidence.
He's not a scammer himself.
He's
that we
scamming
know
us
of.
right now.
Actually, so he said I needed to send him $500
Yeah.
for the next point.
For the fifth point,
Yeah.
for $500. Number 3, it says misspellings and grammatical errors also make the email seem more authentic and believable. Now, I get that, except for the ones where it's like supposed to be written from my bank as clearly an automated email saying we've detected something like that. When those
You
have
expect
misspellings, that's a big red flag. But if it's just from hey, I'm in the fraud department and I noticed something weird in your account, if that has misspellings, maybe that does make it seem more legit. But then I question.
Yeah, fraud
I'm
is
working
spelled
with that bank.
F-R-O-D.
Yeah.
Fraud.
Frude.
I'm from the
Oh, he's-
Frude
it's-
department.
It could be Scottish.
A spelling
maybe.
error, maybe, but grammatical.
Yeah.
When there's like
people-
missing words where you're like, wait a minute, there should be a word here, like you or something like that.
I
Boom.
think we've all seen things when you just take English, you put it in Google Translate, convert it to Spanish, then take it back and put it in English, and you see, oh wow, that got really messed up, and that's what these things look like. But the fourth and final point here, because most people are not great writers, they may have a subconscious affinity for emails with minor errors. Be like, hey, I'm an idiot, and this guy's an idiot too. We should be friends.
I think that one's BS, but
Yeah, I want to go out because, if nothing else, I'm like, I'm better than this person. I'm not going to respond to this.
What is it? Is it Occam's razor that the simplest answer is probably the right one? That they're doing that Google Translate thing, and that is why
that
this is
should have
happening.
been number one on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the spam filter one because that might be an added side effect of this happening. That you could get through some filters that have it set up a different way, but I don't think that's the reason personally.
So, interestingly enough, are there easily like spam filters? Are those fairly pricey thing? It's never been
Not necessarily. I mean, Spam Assassin is open source.
Yeah, the bad ones are free.
So, I guess that's something that if I wanted to,
Oh,
I
you
could
could
set up
test
on my computer and just start like throwing stuff at it. I figured that would be part of their testing regime, like start fuzzing stuff and doing replacements.
But going back to a point he made early on, though, if they're sending out a million emails and 999,000 of them get caught by a spam filter, that last 1,000 that gets through is usually enough for them to get results.
We've broken Justin.
Nah,
Why go through the effort of fuzzing? If you can.
no, I mean just for my own, just to see like, let me see.
Well, to see if that-
let me see
if
if
that
there's like
point's true.
something that occurs, and then try to cross multiple. This is more me designing an experiment than actually caring about what
So
was
this
said here.
makes me think of Office Space, right? Because this is how criminals get created, is that smart people sit down and think, wait a minute,
I could do that.
I could be so much better at this crime. Or Breaking Bad, right? With
Yeah.
the school
Yeah.
science teacher, like, I could make meth better than anybody
Things
else.
seem to work out great for him.
I only watched the first episode.
Yeah.
Also, it started because he had cancer. So
Yeah. Well, things started out bad for him, and
yeah.
Well,
they got slightly better, then a lot worse.
either way, I'm sure that between the three of us, if we sat down and worked on it, we could come up with an amazing malware phishing campaign.
I still like our other plan with the
Of staying
the
out of jail.
editing. Oh, yeah, well, that too.
Yeah, yeah,
I
staying
like
on
that
it.
plan.
However, this might actually be the crew you want to put. You want a marketing person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You want a developer. You want somebody who knows about security systems.
And you want to publicize it on a podcast
Absolutely.
before you do
This
it.
is our Ocean's 3, right?
Yeah.
This is when you want to have nobody listen.
Yeah, Technado just went silent. What happened to them?
Yeah,
They're rich. All kinds of rich. It's
Stop
crazy.
right after that episode where
Yeah.
they talked about
The idea finally hit them.
Yeah. Well, we'll think about it. I'm going to work on some names in marketing,
Yep.
so I'll get on that, and you guys get on your parts.
I'll go ahead and get Don to stand up some of these spam filters, and I'll just start slinging stuff at them.
You know who else could help us with this?
Who's that?
A pen tester.
Absolutely.
And that's who we're going to talk to next. We're going to talk with Barry Morgan, co-founder of Absolute Cyber Defense. So we're going to hear all of his fun stories and some of the techniques that they use, and we'll get to that right after this on Technado.
I'm James Packer. I'm the General Manager of Kirk ISS based in the Cayman Islands. I used IT Pro TV extensively in my last place. It grew very well, helped upskill the team. I had 110 engineers in the field, and we had dozens of IT Pro accounts with the guys training, and last year alone they passed over 40 certs by using the online training. I think I can safely say without IT Pro TV I wouldn't be where I was today, because I only got this job on the back of the qualifications I have.
All right, welcome back to Technado. We're joined by our guest now, Barry Morgan, and Barry is the co-founder of Absolute Cyber Defense. How you doing, Barry?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And just to kick things off, why don't you tell us a little bit about Absolute Cyber Defense and what it's all about?
Sure. So my partner and I, we founded ACD back about a year and a half ago now. So it's kind of an offshoot for a small consulting company that I started back in 2016, which was designed to provide security services for small businesses that necessarily couldn't afford to hire a full-time security staff or pay one of the big four for pen tests and things like that. So that being the goal, one thing that I learned that I kind of suck at the business side of things, so I kind of needed to have a partner. That's when I brought in my partner Brian Aquino, and we kind of reformed what was Hackabit LLC at the time into Absolute Cyber Defense. So with the same goal in mind, still, we provide security services, anything from pen testing to building lab environments to consulting to on-site training, specifically geared towards small companies.
So I was distracted that whole time because that tower behind you looks like a stormtrooper.
I'm glad you brought it up, man. I was like, that is some futuristic computer right there.
Really cool looking computer. It's got a little antenna on top for those
it's a BB-8.
Listening.
It's like a new BB-8, I bet.
Oh, I bet it does. Yeah. Can that walk around and stuff?
Did
you build that?
That's my password cracking machine. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's why it's smoking. All right, got it.
It's got 6 GPUs.
So tell me a little bit about your journey to get where you were, because I kind of read a little bit of your bio, and
Sure.
you started in the Air Force, right?
That's correct. Yep. So back in during the dot-com era, so the whole cyber thing, which we just called network security back in those days, was becoming the new, it was becoming evident that it was the way of the future. Everyone was going to have personal computers on their desks and at home and whatnot. So I was in the Air Force at the time, and they had this new position that was freshly created called intrusion detection. So being I was brand new and they didn't know what intrusion detection was and they didn't know what to do with me, they just said, okay, well, you sit here, monitor this screen, and if you see something fishy, let somebody know. So that was kind of my intro into like cyber defense. In doing that, I said, well, if I'm going to sit here and monitor this, I might as well learn what it is I'm actually looking at and try to be good at it. And then one thing leads to another, and hey, this stuff's kind of cool. So from there, I just kind of really started teaching myself everything I could. Eventually got out of the Air Force in 2006, and kind of the rest is history.
Now, working for the Air Force and big systems like that it's a huge undertaking. It's very complex. But you mentioned with Absolute Cyber Defense that you guys focus on small business. So is that like what led you to kind of targeting small businesses as opposed to just staying at that giant network level like the government?
So I realized there was a need. So prior to me starting my own company, I was working for another, we'll just call them a big defense contractor. And one of the things I was responsible for was the acquisitions of services. So things like our annual, penetration test requirements, so on and so on. The regulatory compliance audits, your SOC 2s and all that. And then, I was in charge of the acquisition of those services, I saw what those services cost, right? So when you're talking $50,000, $60,000 for somebody to come in and do 2 weeks of work, then let's start considering, well, there are small businesses that also have these regulatory compliance needs. They're trying to get off the ground, startup companies. They definitely can't afford to pay one of these guys 40, 50 grand. So I just saw a need there, kind of really just threw my hat in the ring, put out some feelers, put together a LLC real quick. And, and then sure enough, that need that I thought was there was actually there, and the business started rolling in.
Now, what are some of the services that you provide? You mentioned like penetration testing. Is that like your primary focus, or are there other activities you guys do?
Yeah, we do others. That is our primary focus because that seems to be something, again, going back to the regulatory compliance world. Different states all have different requirements for companies that handle, personal data or financial data. And a lot of those states, required that you have an annual penetration test performed. So being that our rates obviously are way, that are geared towards small businesses, we're more attractive. Plus we have the experience to back it up and everything. That would be our primary service. Next to that would be kind of our consulting services. So companies will say, hey, can you come in and tell the story for us about, why our users can't get out to Gmail, and why we make them change passwords every 90 days. Security awareness type training. So that would be kind of the second biggest service, or second biggest need that we feel. And then the third would be training environments. So one of the things that my partner Brian really brings to the table is his knowledge of cloud computing and things, and building out lab environments that are publicly available. So if your organization wants to test out a new product, but they don't necessarily want to put it in production, we can spin up an Active Directory lab with a few hosts, and you can lease it for, I don't know, a week, 30 days, whatever the case may be.
So you mentioned that a lot of regulations say that certain types of businesses have to have a pen test about every year or so. What do you recommend as a good frequency for a small to medium-sized business that's maybe just getting into this for the first time?
Well, I definitely recommend at least once a year, and it depends on what your initial finds. I think one thing that even past that, beyond the penetration test, so what I've seen is the requirements are very, very, broad, right? So they say you need an external penetration test. So that can really be accomplished by scanning your public-facing infrastructure, right? No vulnerabilities, write a report, and everybody feels like, okay, we're good. Regulatory compliance speaking, you are good, but I also recommend that your initial be a full-on internal and external red team engagement. So actually let someone phish your employees, let someone get in on your network, privilege escalation, lateral movement, whole thing, so you can have a true picture of where you're at internally. Because at the end of the day, a dedicated or a determined adversary is going to get in, right? So whether you have holes on your network or not, they're going to get in somehow. So I highly recommend at least doing it once a year, but with your initial at least being a full-blown red team internal and external engagement. And then based on the findings of those, really depends on how often should you do it. Now, let's say you go in, it's just, red ink everywhere, then, you possibly want to maybe follow up quarterly. So you put a mitigation plan in place, and then the next quarter, maybe have another one done to see if your mitigation strategies are actually working and improving your security posture.
So between large, medium, and small size businesses, you kind of had engagements with all of those. Do you see there's a drastic difference between what you discover during a pen test for small and medium businesses, like the big issues versus corporate settings?
No, not really. The scale is different, obviously, right? But it really, 90% of it basically comes down to poor credential management, so really we don't see vulnerabilities, right? Like you think about in the old school days where you see a vulnerability, you run Metasploit and execute that vulnerability, or exploit that vulnerability, et cetera. We really don't see a lot of that anymore. Patch management's pretty good across the board for enterprises as well as small businesses. A lot of that's done automatically. What we see a lot of is users have excessive privileges on the network. So if we can get on one user's box and that user has excessive privileges, then we have their privileges and we're able to move laterally throughout the network. Another one of the big ones we see is password.txt files on users' desktops. So not necessarily vulnerability, just poor practices. And like I said, that's pretty much standard for any size organization. It's just the scale of what we see, how much we see is the difference.
Now, when we're talking about big businesses, I'm always shocked when I find out about some huge security mistake that a large enterprise made. And you look at it, you're like, man, they had the resources. They should not have made that mistake. When it comes to small businesses, I have a lot more sympathy. Like, you've only got so many resources. It's easy to make mistakes. But in your experience with the work you've done so far, like what is the most grievous incident of poor security that you've come across?
Oh, so I mean, the most egregious that I've seen would be anything that has default username and password, right? I mean, that's gonna be the first thing. If I get to whatever the appliance is or whatever the Cisco router or whatever, the first thing I'm gonna try to do is the default username and password. And if that works, then that's your security 101, right? Change your passwords, before you put it in production. And we see that, and that would, to me, is one of the unexcusable events. Like you said, you have a little bit of empathy for the smaller companies because they're trying to get a product to market. They probably start off with 2 guys. That grows a little bit, then that grows. Now they need infrastructure, then they have a network. And next thing you know, you've gone from 2 guys with laptops to a decent sized set of infrastructure. But again, those things happen, but there's still no excuse to not change default usernames and passwords.
We're talking with Barry Morgan of Absolute Cyber Defense. And Barry, I'm curious, when you say that happens from time to time, like what kind of percentage are we talking about? Is that 1 out of 10 times that they haven't changed
that's
that?
minimal. Yeah, that's minimal at this point. Software vendors have, essentially, I just attended B-Sides here in Raleigh last week. And one of the interesting talks was that security software vendors have the least secure software, right? So, and there was a graph showing that, web apps for healthcare and for financial institutions have all tested fairly well, where something like 70% of security software didn't test very well. So believe it or not, the default username and password issue has a lot of times been in security software. Because most vendors don't necessarily Microsoft Windows Server doesn't have a default username and password, right? So you don't really see that as much as maybe you did back in the NT days or something. But yeah, very minimal, I would say. But I would recommend to anybody that listens to this, definitely verify that all your especially if you've inherited something from someone else, that's still at the end of the day your responsibility now. So verify all that stuff has been changed.
So while they've been talking, I've had a chance to delete all those password.txt files off my desktop. But now that that's taken care of, have you seen an uptick? So default username and passwords. I've taught some, summertime security camps, things like that, and we would give out Raspberry Pis.
Right.
Well, that has a default username and password, and I wouldn't say anything about it, and then I would just start shutting off people's machines.
Right.
Right. So I would do like a network scan and go, I'm in, shut down.
Right.
And the kids would be like, what's going on?
Right.
Have you seen like the climb of certain security issues when people start bringing these smaller devices, like these IoT devices, smart cameras, those things onto premises?
I can't point to an example to where that has made or break, was able to make or break any engagement that I was on. I've actually, if I were to go either way with it, I would say the bring your own device has kind of made my job a little bit more difficult in some ways, because a lot of people are able to check email on their phones now. So, the code, the malicious software that we write to execute is typically to execute on a Windows desktop. So, if people check it from their phones, our code doesn't execute. So we really, really want you guys to be checking and clicking from, Outlook, right? So the bring your own device has helped in those ways, but I can only imagine that it's hurt in other ways as far as the privacy of the company goes. So, if you could check your email from your phone, you obviously have access to your company's data on this mobile device that could easily be lost, right, or stolen. But to answer your question, no, I haven't necessarily seen any uptick in exploitable vulnerabilities regarding mobile devices.
All right, so let's run through a little scenario here. Let's say that I work for a dentist office, maybe 10 employees, 8 computers, a file server. Really, really small network. Right. Maybe like using Office 365 for email and things. So I don't necessarily have my own email server, but I'm worried about security. And through the amazing global reach of the Technado listener base, I learn about Absolute Cyber Defense. So I reach out to you and engage your services to come and test the network to find out whether or not we're doing everything we can. So what does that engagement look like? Do you actually travel out to the site? Do you do all this remotely? Does it take a week or 2 weeks? What does the engagement actually look like?
Yeah, there's no two are alike. It's really up to what the client wants. Sometimes they want us to be on site because they don't like the idea of somebody they've never seen or shook the hand of to, be authorized to try to attack their network. Time-wise, it typically, if we're going to do a full red team engagement from, reconnaissance to phishing to privilege escalation and lateral movement, that could take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, depending to do it right. Depending on the size of the organization. I always recommend, I always recommend that you let us do the phishing piece. I know everybody says that, well, we know our users are going to click, right? We already know that. Let's skip that part, which is fine. But I do recommend let's at least simulate it. Let me send you a payload, and you just execute it on a box somewhere. Then we'll move from there. So yeah, that's what I recommend. I recommend just like an attacker would do. And those are the two ways. We can either try to fish our way in, or you could just give us, we can simulate that, and you can execute the code on a box for us. What we do is we try to start with, okay, just execute our code on a standard user's workstation. If you execute on a domain administrator's workstation, then why are we even here? I'm already going to be able to do everything I need to. So start with someone who has the least amount of privileges in your organization, and let us show you how we can go from that level of access up to one of the domain controller or file server or whatever the case may be. And again, so to answer your question, the scope is always based on what the client wants. So
the customer is always right.
That's right.
So I like to think of this kind of almost like it's like a football scrimmage or something. You've got and you're the head coach. You've got the offense and the defense playing against each other, but they're both part of your team. How do you judge success? Because, oh, great, we scored a touchdown. Well, that means my defense is terrible. Or, oh, wow, we stopped them. That means my offense is terrible. When you're doing this kind of engagement, what do you deem a success for yourself? That are you happier when you have trouble and you can't get in because that means the customer's doing more things right, or when you're just walking right in the front door?
Well, I feel as from the offensive side, I feel successful when I can meet the objective, which the objective is usually to gain access to whatever data, whatever the crown jewels are, or to get domain admin. I feel successful when that happens because I want the client to feel like they got their money's worth, right? So if I go in and say, hey, you guys are great, totally secure, I couldn't find anything wrong, I don't feel like they got their money's worth. They want to, they're hiring me because they want to find the problems that they feel like they know are there. The hard part of that is where I feel successful. At the same time, I end up having to call somebody's baby ugly, when we write the report. And a lot of times that doesn't go over very well. But, that's, the hiring person, usually one of the senior level IT people, they're fine with it, they're okay. But then when you're in the room doing your readout, and like the security managers and all the guys that were, incident responders who missed all of this are in the room with you, it can be kind of uncomfortable, and trying to say, look, I'm not trying to, like I say, call your baby ugly. I'm trying to help you here. We really, at the end of the day, want the same goal, or have the same goal in mind.
Yeah, if they're scowling at you across the table, I guess that means you did your job, right?
You're right, yeah.
So if Don goes back to dental school and he gets his degree and starts this practice he was talking about, how would he reach out to you? What's the best way to talk to you guys?
Sure. So our website is simple. It's absolutecyberdefense.com. We have a contact us button there. We also have a small write-up of all our services, our major services. And of course, we're willing to entertain any requirements someone may have that aren't listed there. So yeah, that'd be the best way. You can reach me at barry.morgan@absolutecyberdefense, or just like I said, visit our website.
Sounds good. Now, have you hooked up like a bell or an alarm to that system behind you so that every time it cracks a password?
No, I kick it on. If I've got some hashes to crack, I usually throw them in there at night and then let it cook overnight and come back in the morning. So I have to try to shut down sometimes.
Does it have a cool name? I feel like that computer has a name.
Zool is its name.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but we've got the full-size Vigo the Carpathian on the wall over here.
Oh, nice.
So, any Ghostbuster references are good.
We can definitely relate. Yeah.
Well, do you have a corresponding gatekeeper? I don't.
Yeah. He's the key master. Yeah. And he's
I'm
looking
the
for
gatekeeper.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Barry, for taking the time with us today and joining us and talking about pen testing and what you guys do.
No, thank you for having me. It was fun.
All right, and thank you all of you for watching, but stay tuned. We're not done. We've got more Technado coming up right after this.
Are you a career changer or a budding tech pro who's looking to start their career in IT? I'm Wes Bryan, and along with my fellow IT Pro TV edutainer Cherokee Boos, we've just shot a new show just for you. Each week, we'll dive into topics to help you launch your career in tech. Watch how to get started in IT on YouTube now. Just head to youtube.com/ITProTV to watch and look for new episodes every Saturday at 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time.
All right, thank you to Barry for joining us all the way from North Carolina, and that was pretty interesting to, like I said, we've talked to some of the bigger, or pen testers that work at bigger companies or government institutions before, but that was kind of interesting to hear, like the example you used of the dentist, like the smaller instances where maybe there's not the systems in place that they have at the big places, but I mean, if we're talking about a dentist, we're talking about HIPAA compliance and different records like that, so that the stakes are still just as high for people like that.
Yeah, it seems this would be a way to circumvent, if you're just getting started, something that could be absolutely devastating early part of your business.
Yeah.
Especially if you're medical or financial or anything. You go, I didn't pen test. We had this internal tool. Someone gained access to it. Also, we're going to have to close the doors kind of thing, right? So it's interesting that he found that niche and it's working out for him.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like fun. I mean, that sounds like a fun job, honestly.
I really want to give try either phishing or like physical intrusion. Like I want to try to see if I can talk my way into somewhere.
Yeah.
But on the up and up, so I don't end up like those individuals in, what was it, Iowa?
Arkansas or somewhere where
they were like, we're in the building. We're supposed to be here. You're going to jail.
Yeah.
But I promise.
Yeah. Please don't hurt me.
Yeah. Please don't shoot again. All right. I want to let you know about a couple things before we let you go today. First of all, I've got some webinars coming up. If you check out itpro.tv/webinars, you can not only see the upcoming ones, but the archive of all of the past webinars that we've done before. But the next one is one I'm pretty excited about coming up on Halloween itself on Thursday, October 31st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Threats in Disguise. Are you haunted by hidden hacker hardware? Look at that alliteration. Haunted by hidden hacker hardware.
You know who wrote that?
Was it you?
Me.
I think
Marketing genius.
Oh my goodness, we have two marketing geniuses on this team.
This company is just going to take right off.
I don't know how the bank's going to feel about this business plan we put together during the break for our illegal activity.
No, I think we're going to actually have it funded by legal cannabis retailers who don't have anything to do with their cash right now, except for invest in businesses like ours.
That's true. What if we get caught with all that weed smelling money?
Just say it's CBD oil.
I don't think it works like cocaine where they use
they just rub it on the plants. They're like, this is how I get them to grow big.
A lot of people have snorted marijuana through this.
No, bro, they put it in the vault with the weed.
They just
not that they're like, I'm doing this wrong.
All right, so we're good at grammar, not good at...
We're out of rolling papers. Give me that 100. I think that's how it works. That's organic, right?
Yeah,
that's true.
I know.
So that Don, you're doing that webinar with Daniel, correct?
Correct.
And so we're going to talk about all kinds of, actually, like pen testing devices. Do you still call that pen testing when we're talking about physical security?
It depends. It is a part of penetration testing.
Yeah. So all the keyloggers and trackers and things that you can imagine, we'll be getting into that. So that we're going to have a lot of fun with that one. And like I said, you can check out all the past webinars as well. But while you're there on the internet, head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. Over there, we've got information about signing up for personal plans that include a 30% off code for the lifetime of your subscription, as well as a 7-day free trial. Also have a form to fill out if you want to get a demo of our business account packages and see all the cool things that businesses can use to track their users, assign courses, all that good stuff. That's at go.itpro.tv/Technado. Well, gentlemen, I don't know about you, but looking at my buzzword bingo card, it is just a sea of blue ink, but nothing has fully lined up. What do you got?
It's the same for me. I got it like 3 different ways, but they're all like words that we haven't said in forever.
Got government, VPN, breach, Linux cloud, vulnerable, automation container, MFA, encrypt, exploit, Russia, but none of those made a line there.
We got to dump some words. Some words just...
Well, okay, we'll do it. Yeah, I wrote down a couple of words that during the show that I thought could be good. Patch. We said a few times today.
Yeah.
And credentials has come up a lot recently. Again, these are all kind of like security-related words. I think we need a few more outside.
Or I need to start choosing articles based on
I thought
better
you did
buzzwords.
because a couple of them, the headlines were just like three. Oh, we said VPN exploit and this and that, but a lot of fun. We'll do it again next week. And
You're
maybe
stacking our bingo cards because I've noticed I'm not getting any of the words that are in title.
I print out 3 cards, and you don't think I look at them on the way over and go, oh, "This one's Justin's card." Definitely, if you want to print your own card. Not waste my time. Then you can pick what's
I
on
mean,
it.
you're already printing one, so I figured you could save
Yeah.
us all some time. So thank you so much.
I mean, we could use the web page. It actually has a little button
You
blocker
could.
and stuff.
You could.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll give that a try. Again, that's over at go.itpro.tv/buzzword-bingo if you want to play along with us. But we're all done for this week, so definitely check that out for next week, and we will see you then on Technado.